Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. I'd like to welcome you to this program. We would like to think that each and every day we empower people in a good way. Yes, we have crises, and yes, we're going to face those crises. We're going to walk right into the crisis to understand it without any political or religious ideologies. We're just going to look for the truth, and then we're going to empower people. Today, for example, we're going to begin by telling you about olive compounds identified that bind protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. This is from Monash University in Australia. Considering how many people worldwide, nearly 15 million, suffer from Alzheimer's, a debilitating neurodegenerative disease, something as simple as olives that can make a difference, wow. So adhering to the Mediterranean diet has been shown to reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's disease, and the phenolic compounds in extra virgin olive oil, including what is called an oleocanthanol, has gained a significant amount of attention. So we're going to talk about that and a lot of other things about how to stay healthier longer. And by the way, University of California, Berkeley, being a selfish jerk doesn't get you ahead. Well, we'll discuss that as well. But more importantly today, after health and nutrition, I thought it's important to have some very positive input. So we're going to hear Simon Sinek talk about empathy. Empathy is very important because if you have empathy, more often than not, you're on the right side of your spiritual authenticity. You're still looking for the sacred in all things, including forgiveness, and not having conflict that results in violence or destruction or pain to another or a society or a culture or an ethnicity. And hence, by simply using at the beginning of a discussion, what would be the outcome if I chose my words based upon being empathetic, or if I chose my words with no regard for the consequences? And that's what we're seeing now with so much hatred and vitriol being spewed all over the place. And yet the average person just wants to live a relatively simple life. So we're going to talk about that. Also, there's a very interesting discussion by a psychologist about defunding the police. What is the personality profile of police, and what are the likely outcomes if we defund the police? Now, mind you, the average person doesn't want to defund the police. They don't want police shooting innocent people, that's for sure. They certainly don't want people stopped and frisked simply because of their color of their skin. That's not an argument, because that's an absolute. That's where most people are. Now, you're going to have some exceptions to that, but the vast majority of people understand that we don't want violence. We don't want to see people beaten. There was a video last night where an older gentleman, probably in his 80s, was just walking down the street, and up came one of these street punks and hit him in the back of the head and knocked him out. Caused a lot of damage to him. But people cheered it as if that's something to celebrate. That's what we become? No, we have not become that. So let's address that. Also, a new study, the definitive antibody study, why the tests don't work. I've been saying this all along. I'm all for, absolutely for, any medication that can prevent a disease, any disease, without killing or injuring the patient. If you're going to give a drug, make sure it works and is safe. We have such drugs. They're just not being promoted. They're being condemned. That's purely political, when an entire pandemic that isn't a pandemic by any scientific definition, but politically and economically, yeah, it's a pandemic. Hundreds of billions of dollars going to be made from this vaccine and new, very expensive drugs, all experimental. In fact, I just spoke with Mary Holland's office yesterday, and Mary Holland called us and said she's on her way back from that big demonstration in Berlin, and she said, I fear that this vaccine is going to kill at least 1 million Americans. Whoa. Mind you, who's Mary Holland? Well, she's one of the most accomplished constitutional lawyers in America. She was a professor at NYU in constitutional law. She now works full-time for Robert Kennedy's Children's Defense Fund, and they were just in Berlin talking about our right to push back against bad science, bad public health policy, and to look for the truth. So when she tells us that 1 million Americans are going to die, so we're inviting her on. She wants a few days to rest from her trip, then we're having her on to talk about that. But we're going to have a short segment on what does the actual science show about the antibody test they're giving. And then a surprise. I'm going to play about 10 minutes of my brand new self-empowerment video, the first I've done in 6 years, Regaining Your Spiritual Authenticity, Reconnecting with the Sacred. That's our show. Let's begin. And of course, we always begin by empowering you to make good choices. When I was in Germany, one of my many trips to Germany, I went to a very popular house that serves a Hofbräu, I think it's called, that serves food and alcohol before you go home to dinner. Meaning you've quit work, you go to this place, you eat all this stuff, drink all this stuff, then you go home, have a meal. And Dr. Klaus Martin had taken me there, and I was studying for about 10 days at his anti-aging center, probably the best in the world, and interviewing all the patients about how they lived their lives to get sick, and then came there and he gave them these injections and they got better. In any case, at the table was a big round family-style table. About 8 to 10 people could sit at. In the middle of the table was this little circular tray that went around, and there must have been 15 different slots, and they had different types of sausages in the slots. So then they had sauerkraut in the middle, and then they had big mugs of beer, not bottles of beer, I mean big, like 32 ounces. So I'm just watching, I'm just sitting back watching, and they're having a great time. And they just kept eating and eating and eating and drinking. And then after about an hour, they said, okay, it's time to go. Where are you going? I'm going home to have dinner. Well, exactly where's that food supposed to go? You're filled with all these pig sausages. And by the way, it was rather gross because in the back part of this Hofbräu, they had the pigs, and they were slaughtering the pigs. And that was just something hard to watch. But when a big part of your diet is sausage, and it is, and lots of salt, which it is, then you start to look at these ruddy faces and overweight people and think, well, you're eating yourself to death. In any case, then you go to Italy. Now, in Italy, you sit down and things are different. You don't snack all day. You go in around noon and everyone stops. I mean, like the whole country comes to a standstill for about 3 hours, noon to 3, some noon to 4. And they serve one dish at a time, and it's not a big dish, it's a small dish. But that small dish is absolutely delicious and very healthy, like an antipasto where they'll have some grilled, let's say zucchini, a yellow and green zucchini, grilled onion, grilled tomato, grilled mushrooms like a portobello mushroom. And then in the middle of the table, they'll have different types of olive oil and also some balsamic vinegar. So you kind of baste, and there's a little basting brush, so you can baste what you want on it. Then comes your salad, and it's generally a very healthy salad with all kinds of greens. Some I'd never seen. Like one day I ate, and it was a salad that's little crunchy. It was crunchy and sweet and gave a great mouthfeel, but also it just tasted delicious. And I'd never seen this before. They said, oh yeah, it grows here, grows wild. So people are very familiar with herbs, all kinds of herbs, and mushrooms, different types of mushrooms. And they all have mushrooms drying, and they all have jar upon jar upon jar of different types of olive oil. In fact, on one rack, I saw 15 different types of olive oil. Now, some were not to my taste. I mean, one was so thick, it tasted like you can imagine a car oil, the oil you put in your car. It had that consistency. I'm thinking, oh, God, I don't want to throw this up and embarrass myself. And so I just smiled and said, oh, how is it? It's different. We're used to more refined oil over here, lighter taste. They don't have that over there. That's for tourists. In any case, olives are a big part of this. It's nothing at all to have 20 olives, maybe 6 different types of olives. And they've got hundreds of different types of olives, so there's always something that you've never tried before. And then you'll get your pasta with a wonderful homemade sauce. The sauces tend to be sweet because they dip the, let's say the pasta, the Roma tomatoes into hot water and then peel off the skin, and they saute it with different oils and seasonings, so it's very, very sweet, very light. And so you're only halfway through a meal. I never ate in a place that had a dessert that was a cake or pie or ice cream. It was always fruit. And it's kind of surprising if you've never been there before. Now, that's not in the restaurants because they've Americanized the restaurants, and most, not all. But in the homes, it's grapes or pear or apple, whatever the fruit is. And boy, you talk about a difference in health. Now, yes, there's Italians that smoke and don't exercise, and that negates a lot of the years they'd otherwise live. But I was talking with Italians in their 90s in one village who were working every day, 6 days a week, climbing up and down this terrain, harvesting, big, thick thighs, strong back, strong muscles, 92 years of age, because they didn't smoke. And they made their own wine, which was it's much like apple cider. And so something to understand. This Monash University in Australia did a study and showed that for Alzheimer's patients, and there's very few Alzheimer's patients as compared to other countries in Italy, because they live by that Mediterranean diet. Lots of beans, by the way. All kinds of beans. Beans are a big part of their diet. But lots and lots of mushrooms and lots of garlic, tons of garlic. And they also do something there. They'll take a whole large elephant garlic, they roast it, and then you peel back the outer layer of the skin, and then they put olive oil and seasonings inside of it, and then you eat that like you would eat a stuffed baked potato. Delicious. So if you've never done your own stuffed baked mushroom, it's delicious. I do all kinds of things, like I'll take a mushroom and I'll put fresh hummus in the middle of it, or I'll put guacamole in the middle of it. You can be very creative with it. Anyhow, what they found was there's a vast body of scientific literature that the disease is caused by an accumulation of toxic extracellular amyloid beta peptides and intracellular neurofibrillary tangles that consist of these hyperphosphoryl tau. This kind of protein. And so olives and the natural phenolic compounds in olives and olive oil help prevent that from happening. So one way, just one way, that you can put these phenolic lignans that bind strongly to the hairpin turn of the A beta and get it out of the brain is to have more olives and olive oil. I mentioned a study from the University of California, Berkeley. The evidence is in. Nice guys, nice women don't finish last. And being a selfish jerk doesn't get you ahead. That's the clear conclusion from research that tracked disagreeable people from college or graduate school to where they landed in their careers 14 years later. And the findings were not a surprise. They were rather consistent. No matter the individual or the context, disagreeableness did not give people an advantage in the competition for power, even more cutthroat dog-eat-dog organizational cultures. So the paper was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So being a nice person pays off. Being a disagreeable person does not. Just something to think about. And also, venom from honeybees is found to kill aggressive breast cancer cells. I remember, and this is from the Harry Perkins Institute for Medical Research in Australia, I remember when I went to my first vegan retreat upstate, I believe it was 1969 9. And these were all older people. I'm in my young 20s. And these were, I guess the next youngest person was like 65. And they were all nice people. They were just wonderful. They had great sense of humor. The food was healthy but bland. I guess they had 2 chefs in the kitchen, one to prepare the food and one to take the taste out of it. Everything tasted the same to me. Oh, what's this? Oh, that's vegan meatloaf. They just ground up some green beans and walnuts and cashews and didn't hold together very well. But it was tasteless. And so I said, what seasonings do you? And they kind of looked at me like, seasonings? No, we don't use seasonings here. So, but what really interested me was we were doing this at a beekeeper's house, and each one of these people was getting a bee sting. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, why are you letting the bee sting you? And they put this little bee in like a tweezer, and it would sting the person. Normally, bees are not going to do that. I've had bees since 1972, hives, as many as 145 hives at one time. That's millions of bees. I have bees now, and never been stung, even when you got 10,000 bees on you. So anyhow, they said, well, it's good for arthritis. They were right. The scientific literature shows that. But then you've got the quackbusters and the skeptics say, oh, no, none of that's real. Well, it is real. According to this study, and this is only one of dozens, using the venom from 312 honeybees and bumblebees in Perth, Western Australia, Ireland, and England, 3 separate countries, a Dr. Duffy from the Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research and the University of Western Australia tested the effects of the venom on the clinical subtypes of breast cancer, including triple-negative breast cancer, which has limited treatment options. That's the most deadly. The results are published in the very prestigious international journal, Precision Oncology, and it revealed that honeybee venom rapidly destroyed triple-negative breast cancer and HER2-enriched breast cancer cells. So that is terrific news. Something natural, something that's been around a long time. But remember, the venom was extremely potent, and so that made the difference. And finally, vitamin D3 supplementation improves glycemic control in type 2 diabetic patients. This is from the University of Pavia in Italy. So if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, make sure you're getting your vitamin D3 because it can help you. And this study showed that. That's the latest on health and healing. We are 19 minutes into our program. We're going to take a break. Now, when we come back from the break, we're going to hear this short piece, it's only a minute and 35 seconds, of all the studies on the antibody tests. Here's what they had to say in part. Back in a moment. Please stay with us.
Last week, the Cochrane Review on Antibody Tests was released, where researchers from across the world searched through 11,000 publications on COVID-19 to evaluate all the current data on antibody tests and their results. We're also starting to see a fresh wave of preprint studies in the UK, and I've got a new set of data myself on antibody results amongst long haulers. There are some very interesting conclusions. Let's take a look. Antibody tests are important for a number of reasons. If they work, they help us answer some really critical questions. How many people have had it? Are they immune? And if so, for how long? How likely is a second wave? Could a vaccine be developed on the basis of this antibody response? On a global and national level, we're somewhat paralysed in terms of strategic planning if we don't have answers to these questions. Indeed, the strength and duration of immunity after infection are key issues for shield immunity and for informing decisions on how and when to ease physical distancing restrictions, and whether to send a country back to work or not. Which is why politicians have described the development of antibody tests as game-changing, and indeed they would be if we could rely on them. On the 24th of June, the BMJ published a letter from a group of senior clinical academics publicly questioning the UK government's antibody testing strategy. Professor John Deeks, who led the Cochrane review, said the analysis shows that we don't have much data on the tests and we can't trust any of it.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Gary Null, and nice to have you with us. By the way, we are now engaged in a major campaign to challenge the legitimacy of the skeptics and quackbusters who control everything on complementary alternative medicine on Wikipedia. Hundreds of millions of people visit Wikipedia every week, and if you were seriously ill and you tried everything that orthodox medicine has, and you have cancer, you've done the surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, temporarily it worked, a year later it came back, now you have no defense mechanism, and they try it again, then they send you home and say, I'm sorry, nothing else will work. Well, you'd want to try anything that seemed reasonable, and there's lots of very good therapies that have been proven to help people with terminal cancer live longer, or even in many cases reverse that cancer. I know because I wrote the definitive articles on them, and I did the definitive documentaries on them back in the 1970s and 80s. But Wikipedia, you would see none of that. You would just be told, there's none of this is any good. So now we have a petition being signed from people all over the world. I had no idea that people were so disgusted with Wikipedia that people are coming out of the woodwork, Nobel Prize winners, emeritus professors at Oxford University. I mean, we're talking about heavyweights because they've seen the damage that's been done to their own reputations for suggesting that something in the way of energy medicine or chiropractic or homeopathy, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, complementary medicine, holistic nursing, dentistry, they attack all of it. So they're signing petitions. You too can sign the petition. You can go to prn.fm. You'll see what letter we're writing. It's a very positive letter. It's very, very upbeat letter. We're simply saying, look, to the thousands and thousands of people who fund Wikipedia, shouldn't you know the truth about Wikipedia? And then we show them that truth from Wikipedia's own writings. And we've already had people say, yeah, that's enough for me. I'm not going to give any more. So it's our way of pushing back. But also we have a series of articles. The next article will come out tomorrow, challenging Wikipedia. They're pro-fluoride, but the science shows you shouldn't be pro-fluoride. So tomorrow you'll hear a definitive article on why fluoride is not good, and the science proves it. Then why are they on the wrong side? But they're on the wrong side of all these issues, in our opinion. And then come the lawsuits following that. We've written over 70 articles. Read the articles. And the most important thing is the videos. I've never had to put, and never chose to put, my successes, my achievements, in a 53-year career. But because Wikipedia's biography of myself, and we're using me, Robert Kennedy Jr., Deepak Chopra, everyone's using me. We've had conversations. Gary, you go forth and you see what you can do. And if you succeed, then we will all follow. We're talking about thousands of people following if this works. So what I've done is we've taken our archivist, Sharon, and our editors, like Roland, and our chief editor, who's worked, my goodness, 30 years, Valerie, and we put together the history of my career. And it's 21 different video bios. Not just that I've done something in a field, but I've achieved and mastered that field. So this is the part they've chosen not to mention any of this in my biography. They've made up stuff. Everything you see that's negative is lies. And when we get into court and depositions and discovery, we will prove this. And I'm not allowing a settlement. We're going right up to jury trial. We're suing the individual editors, lots of them. In any case, look at the one video in particular. Please watch this video and share it with everyone you know. It's called AIDS is Not a Death Sentence. They've called me on Wikipedia an AIDS denier. Well, that'll cause publishing contracts to get killed. That makes you, that erases your reputation. Fortunately, I have a very good and strong reputation, and people who've seen my work and know who I am know that. But in this documentary, which is 2 hours and 45 minutes long, the patience their medical records, journalists and the medical records, the doctors, the nurses at the two separate institutions where I was a senior research fellow at the Institute of Applied Biology, cured 10 patients, and the senior researcher at the Institute so states that, proof of it, and shows a letter in the documentary showing that I did what no one else could do, and they didn't allow the public to know it because they were afraid that their funding from Big Pharma would be cut off. So the most important scientific discovery done in the 1980s and 90s, I was curing people with advanced AIDS, HIV infected, they chose to bury. And she acknowledges that. And why? And that she's lived with that all these years. She was dying from 7 strokes in her hospital bed in intensive care. She wrote me this letter. The letter's there, where she apologized for this cover-up. But then you see all the things that are proof that I reversed cancer. You see the patients, you hear them. All right? So see the fact that today we could have saved 1 million lives, had the world been honest. The media come to the press conferences, the media come into the center and talk with the doctors, the patients. They chose not to. So it's all there in the documentary. Watch it. All right? Now, very quickly, and then we're going to go right from here into 10 minutes of my newest self-empowerment video, which I'm happy to share with you. In any case, one of the most important nutrients we can take into our body each day are antioxidants. Now try to understand something. The reason that you're healthy by eating a healthy meal is because the chemicals, the phytochemicals that are in your oranges and lettuces and broccoli, and there are hundreds and hundreds of different ones, they're released into the body and then made available for your cells to pick up, and then your immune system is enhanced, free radicals are trapped and neutralized, and it's these proliferation of oxidative stress-free radicals. You go exercise, it's good for your lungs, good for your muscles, good for secreting the endorphins, so you feel good hormones, the runner's high, good for your balance, strength and stamina, and endurance. But every time you exercise, you also create free radicals, lots of them. So you have a double phenomena. You're getting stronger and healthier, but at the same time, you're prematurely aging yourself. This is a fact. And being the head for 33 years of the Department of Anti-Aging Medicine at the Institute of Applied Biology, I've done over 140 studies and over 44 clinical studies separate to prove this. I just finished 2 clinical studies. I'm about to start a 2-week one the last 2 weeks of October to finish this whole thing up, where all these people were able to reverse objective markers in the body, showing that we reversed a person's markers, reversing their aging process. In any case, one of the most important things you could do is eat a healthy diet. Fresh juices like a glass of orange juice, grapefruit juice, tomato juice, grape juice. Those are all good. And they're good for a simple reason, the antioxidants. So what I've done is this. The average person is not going to be eating everything and drinking everything they should on a daily basis, right? Some days you'll do better than others. Some days you won't do good at all. Some days you'll eat some junk food because you're just stressed or it's there, whatever. That's not a good day for your body. So I put all the antioxidants that I'm aware of into one vegan capsule. All right, there's 90 vegan capsules in a jar, and you take 3 of these a day. So what's in these vegan capsules that make them so powerful, so good, so important, so essential for your health? Vitamin C, 500 milligrams. Vitamin A, 10,000 units from the carotenoids. And then I'll just go through them. Vitamin E, B6, magnesium, manganese, zinc, selenium, copper, quercetin, astaxanthin, L-carnosine, lycopene complex, rosemary leaf powder, tocotrienols, raspberry leaf powder, citrus bioflavonoids, rutin, bilberries, and also red wine concentrate, grape skin extract, 150 milligrams of just a grape skin extract, green tea, 200 milligrams of green tea extract, reduced glutathione, L-cysteine, coenzyme Q10, N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, super oxide dismutase, taurine, pine bark extract, there's your pycnogenol, licorice root, broccoli stem, lutein, cabbage leaf, carrot root, milk thistle, and bromelain. There's nothing like this in the world that I could find. Nothing. And if you were to take each one of these ingredients separately, buy a month's supply separately, you'd be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Well, you got a great deal today because they're on special. You're also going to get, with this, a documentary called Shopping and Cooking Healthy. And it takes you step by step how to shop. I'm in store showing you the right things to do. So you've got all this information, and it's in one single phone call. So make the phone call and get your super antioxidant. That's what it's called. This is the super antioxidant package. All right? And do I believe everyone needs it? You bet I do. I take this every day and I take it with me. I want my antioxidants. I know what they do. I know what they do to lessen the free radical damage and the inflammation that can cause from the free radicals and the cytokines. So get your super antioxidant and get a video with it. Call this number. All right? Call 877-627-5065. 877-627-5065. One more time, 877-627-5065. And you can call the same number and get the hour and 23-minute self-empowerment video that's following this. Right now, we're going to play 10 minutes of it. It's really terrific. I took on all the issues that people tell me they've got problems with, crisis with. What do I do? And I give you the solutions. Very insightful, powerful, and powerfully insightful. In fact, I gave it for 10 people, all walks of life, all genders, all ethnicities. And I said, tell me what you like or don't like about it before I finish it. And they said, this is the most powerful film you've ever done. It's more powerful than love. It's more powerful than Overcoming the Dark Side, Happiness, Anger, Taming the Beast Within, all those 50 other films. So this is it, brand new. I just filmed it a couple months ago. All right. And finally, our vitamin, Neil from the store is now not working at the store. He's working in the vitamin closet in our office. And you can call him, and he's there. He's there. We're open from noon to 8, 7 days a week. Here's Neil's number, 646-926-5430. Again, 646-926-5430. And Neil has his own group of friends. Every time I go in the store, they'd all be there with him. So now you know where Neil is, and so you can call him and work with him from the vitamin closet down the office. We're going to take a quick break and come right back with the first 10 minutes of the new film. And the film is called Regaining Your Spiritual Authenticity, Reconnecting with the Sacred in Life. All of us have been living with duality. Duality is what causes most of our confusion. Let me give you an example of this. This past week has been, for me at least, a rough week. Why? Because 3 people that I've worked with over the last several decades, who I have a great deal of respect for, all passed away. One committed suicide, the other 2 died of either complications from heart or stroke. And all 3 I had spoken with recently, 2 in the last week, about, let me help you get on a completely rejuvenative program, change everything. And even though these are smart people, they're very accomplished in what they have achieved, they chose not to take that path. What happens when we don't take the right path? And then there's a consequence. The trouble is, we almost never can see what's going to happen based upon the choice we make. Think how many times you've said something, and then later you think, I shouldn't have said that. That was really stupid, insensitive, it was thoughtless, it was selfish. You can't take it back. I don't care how many times you apologize, because what you've done is you've shared an energy. All we are is energy. We are anywhere from 60 to 100 trillion cells. plus more bacteria by 10 times, all communicating, all with the idea that there should be a constant communication that honors life. Well, if I didn't tell my heart how many beats to beat per minute when I'm standing versus sitting versus jogging versus laying down, how does it know? But if you just went for a run, your heart's going to be pumping. It has to supply blood and oxygen and nutrients and to allow energy, what we call adenosine triphosphate, ATP, to actually combust in a cell. That's what we need to do. So, how does a cell know that you have to slow it down? And how does it know to slow it down to what it was before you started exercising? When you eat, the amount of hydrochloric acid secreted in your stomach is different than when you're not eating. And if you eat a piece of tofu, it's different than if you eat a piece of steak. If you ate a steak mildly cooked, the digestive acids would be different than if it was grilled or deep fried. How does it know? But it does. How does it know when you've eaten something that is filled with bacteria? And there's only a couple things it can do. If you have a virus or bacteria, it can raise your body temperature to try to kill it if it's a virus and give you diarrhea if it's bacteria. But you're looking at the plate, you're looking at the food, you don't see it. You're looking at something right in front of you and you don't see the bacteria. How does the body instantaneously know that it's bacteria that's harmful instead of bacteria that's good? But it does. How does my eye know to blink about every 8 seconds to create a tear film so that my eyes don't chafe? And what would happen if you couldn't sweat? Or if your body in cold weather couldn't constrict? And when it's cold, you constrict to hold in heat. But when you're too hot, it opens it up and allows you to vent it. How does it know to do that? How does it know that our feet should perspire more than our face? You're looking at millions upon hundreds of millions of biochemical processes every single second of your life. And yet you never taught one of those systems ever. It knew. Therefore, to know that your body should be doing things prior to being taught means there was an innate awareness. Well, where did it come from? I'll answer that before this is over, and you'll begin to see how wonderful this unique life process is. We all know how we feel when we're around happy people. We know how we feel when we're around angry people. We know when we're around judgmental people who are hypercritical of us. We know when we are hypercritical of others and how we feel and how they feel because part of your body language expresses it. We know when you yell at a dog, what it'll do, where its eyes will go and its head will go. All the time we're getting feedback and yet we pay no attention to it as if it's irrelevant. It's all relevant. How many of you have ever been in a relationship where the relationship was not fulfilling, but you stayed in the relationship because it gave you something else you thought was more important than being alone? How many of you worked at jobs that didn't honor you, didn't honor your education, didn't honor your standards? And yet you thought, well, the job gives me some security. I'm getting financial security here, and that provides me with the things I can buy that allow me to have a life. Therefore, I'll tolerate this long commute. I'll tolerate indifference or even abuse in the office. I'll tolerate all this because I'm getting this payback over here. Why do we do that? Why do smart people do stupid things and good people do bad things? Why do we believe that the people that we should trust are the people who have power when we never look at what they've done with the power that they have been given? And who gives them power? We do. Power doesn't exist till you surrender it. And the degree that enough people surrender their power, that's exactly to the degree that someone else has that power. I believe that most Americans, at least 85% at this moment, are at what I call an end point. An end point is just before you tip, where you've tolerated, you've accepted, you've adapted, but there's no more room. If you do any more, you will tip. And when you tip, that tipping may be bankruptcy, divorce, it may be a heart attack or a stroke. It may be something that becomes cataclysmic to which you cannot retrieve yourself. Why are we all at these end points? How do we get there? Because we believe in duality. It is the core of almost all of our beliefs. Now, this is what my own epiphany recently showed me. The last epiphany I had before this, about 25 years ago, when I found out one night why all the psychoanalysis and psychotherapy and social analysis really is not the full picture. It is part, understanding the background that we come from, how we've been treated, constructively, destructively. That's all good, but it still left half the equation missing, and I found that it was the other half, the life energies, whether you're dynamic aggressive or dynamic assertive, whether or not you're going to do something or not do something, and what level you're going to do something. If you want something to fail, only have adaptive supportives. Have a dynamic aggressive or dynamic assertive, and that group will then be motivated to do something, and then if they're at the upside, then you're going to do it at the upside. If they're downside, you're going to do it at the downside. Anyhow, I'm not going to repeat my work on life energies. What I have found was that it was an important door opening for, conscious opening for myself and a lot of other people who follow it, including some teachers who now teach this as part of their classes in psychology. We're more than our condition. We're also life energy. And I believe we're now more than our conditioning and we're more than our life energy. We're also something else. And here's the something else. I believe that we should not be focused upon duality as our reality. Now let's hear Simon Sinek, empathy, very important message he's sharing with us.
So I'm embarrassed that I have a career. I talk about things like trust and cooperation, and there should be no demand for my work. But the fact of the matter is there is demand for my work, which means that there's an opportunity. It means that trust and cooperation are not yet standard in our organizations, and yet they should be, and we know that, which is why we're looking for ways to bring those things to our organizations. So I thought I would do something a little different today. You know, when you're speaking to tens of thousands of people and you have the opportunity to share a message, of course, most rational people would say, let's go with something I've talked about lots of times and I'm really good at, but I'm not normal, so I'm going to do something completely new, and I hope this works out. There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility. That sucks, right? It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and they say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer. I'll tell you a true story. A few months ago, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It is a wonderful hotel. And the reason it's a wonderful hotel is not because of the fancy beds. Any hotel can go and buy a fancy bed. The reason it's a wonderful hotel is because of the people who work there. If you walk past somebody at the Four Seasons and they say hello to you, you get the feeling that they actually wanted to say hello to you. It's not that somebody told them that you have to say hello to all the customers, say hello to all the guests, right? You actually feel that they care. Now, in their lobby, they have a coffee stand. And one afternoon, I went to buy a cup of coffee, and there was a barista by the name of Noah who was serving me. Noah was fantastic. He was friendly and fun, and he was engaging with me, and I had so much fun buying a cup of coffee, I actually think I gave 100% tip, right? He was wonderful. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? And without skipping a beat, Noah says, I love my job. And so I followed up. I said, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that would make you say to me, I love my job? And without skipping a beat, Noah said, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, if there's anything that I need to do my job better. He said, not just my manager, any manager. And then he said something magical. He says, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And at Caesar's Palace, the managers are trying to make sure we're doing everything right. They catch us when we do things wrong. He says, when I go to work there, I like to keep my head under the radar and just get through the day so I can get my paycheck. He says, here at the Four Seasons, I feel I can be myself. Same person, entirely different experience from the customer who will engage with Noah. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we've got to get the right people on the bus. I've got to fill my team. I've got to get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people. It's the leadership. If we create the right environment, we will get people like Noah at the Four Seasons. If we create the wrong environment, we will get people like Noah at Caesar's Palace. It's not the people. And yet we're so quick to hire and fire. You can't hire and fire your children. If your kids are struggling, we don't say, you got to see at school, you're up for adoption. So why is it that when somebody has performance problems at work, why is it that our instinct is to say, you're out? We do not practice empathy. What does empathy look like? Here's the lack of empathy. This is normal in our business world. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into our office and says, your numbers have been down for the third quarter in a row. You have to pick up your numbers, otherwise I can't guarantee what the future will look like. How inspired do you think that person is to come to work the next day? Here's what empathy looks like. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into your office and says, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. what's going on. We all have performance issues. Maybe someone's kid is sick. Maybe they're having problems in their marriage. Maybe one of their parents is dying. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And of course it will affect performance at work. Empathy is being concerned about the human being, not just their output. We have, for some reason, our work world has changed over the past 20 and 30 years. We are suffering the side effects of business theories left over from the 80s and 90s. And they are bad for people, and they are bad for business. Let me give you an example. The concept of shareholder supremacy was a theory proposed in the late 1970s. It was popularized in the 80s and 90s. It is now standard form today. You talk to any public company and you ask them their priority and they say maximize shareholder value. Really? That's like a coach prioritizing the needs of the fans over the needs of the players. How are you going to build a winning team with that model? But that's normal today. We don't even perceive it as broken or damaged or wrong or outdated. Remember, the 80s and 90s were boom years with relative peace and a kinder, gentler Cold War. Nobody was practicing hiding under their desks in school anymore. We are no longer in those times. These are no longer boom years. These are no longer peaceful times, and those models cannot work today. Here's another one. Mass layoffs. Using someone's livelihood to balance the books, right? It's so normal in America today that we don't even understand how broken and how damaging it is, not only to human beings, but to business. You know, companies talk about how they want to build trust and cooperation, and they announce a round of layoffs. Do you know the quickest way to destroy trust and destroy cooperation in a business, literally in one day? Lay people off, and everyone gets scared. Right? Can you imagine sending someone home to say, honey, I can no longer provide for our family because the company missed its arbitrary projections this year? And forget about the people who lost their job. Think about the people who kept their jobs. Because every single decision a company makes is a piece of communication. And the company has just communicated to everybody else, this is not a meritocracy. We don't care how hard you work or how long you've worked here. If we miss our numbers and you happen to fall on the wrong side of the spreadsheet, I'm sorry, we cannot guarantee employment. In other words, we come to work every day afraid. And we're asking our youngest generation to work in environments where how would any of us ever stand up and admit, I made a mistake? We're constantly being told, you have to be vulnerable. Leaders are vulnerable. What does that even mean? It doesn't mean you walk around crying, I'm vulnerable, right? No, what vulnerability means is you create an environment in which someone feels safe enough to raise their hand and said, I don't know what I'm doing. You've given me a job and I haven't been trained to do it. I need help. I made a mistake. I screwed something up. I'm scared. I'm worried. All of these things no one would ever admit inside a company because it puts a target on your head in case there's another round. And so we keep it to ourselves. And how can a company ever do well if nobody's ever willing to admit they made a mistake, that's scared, or they don't know what they're doing? And so we've literally created cultures in which every single day everybody comes to work and lies, hides, and fakes. And we're asking our youngest generation to work and succeed and find themselves and build their confidence and overcome their addiction to technology and build strong relationships at work. We're asking them to do this, and these are the environments we've created. We keep saying to them, you're the future leaders. We're the leaders now. We're in control. What are we doing? This is what empathy means. It means if there's an entire generation struggling, maybe it's not them. It's like, you know, the only thing that the common factor in all my failed relationships? Me. Same thing. Oh, we just can't get the right performance out of our people. Maybe it's you, right? It's not a generation. It's not them. They're not difficult or hard to understand. They're human beings like the rest of us, trying to find their way, trying to work in a place where they feel that someone cares about them as a human being. By the way, that's what we all want. In other words, it's not even generational. It's all of us. This is the practice of empathy. that if we're struggling to communicate to someone, if we're struggling to help someone be at their natural best, I'm tired of people saying to me, how do I get the best out of my people? Really, that's what you want? They're like a towel, you just wring them. How can I get the most out of them?
Thank you all for listening, and have a nice day.